Okay. Pialino wampoyowan kenihki initstoke, namantimo machtise tlen ika kenihki tikihtoa ni onya so ni wala. Hi everyone, today I'm gonna teach you a lesson on how to say, how you would say I go and I come. So let me share my screen. This class is gonna be a little bit different because I didn't actually get to finish the slides for the class. So I'm gonna be creating the slides as I teach you the information. And hopefully it still flows well, but if it doesn't, you let me know. And if you all have any questions during the actual class, definitely jump in and ask me. Since I don't have the pre-programmed questions of what I'm going to ask you, I'm just going to ask you spontaneously. And so we're going to see how this goes, and I hope it goes well. I think I could do it though. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And this is episode 22. And let me see, let's click present. And then make sure it goes too small. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about coming and going. So in Nahuatl, there are two verbs for this, for coming and going. And the verbs are ya and wala. And we're also going to talk about two prefixes. One of the prefixes is on, and the other prefix is wal. So here we gotta fix this to wal. Okay, all right. So on and wal. Okay, so if you remember from previous sections, I've taught you such verbs as motlaloa, so ya motlaloa, he runs, or ya nehnemi, he or she walks. Okay, so if you remember when we were using those verbs, they were very regular. So we had ni witoni, I jump, ti witoni, you jump, witoni, he or she jumps, ti witoni, we jump, in witoni, y'all jump, and witoni, they jump. So Nahuatl, I would tell you about 99% of the verbs in Nahuatl are regular, meaning that they all follow this pattern that you see in this slide, where the verbs are very consistent. You just put the prefixes and the little suffixes at the end to change the meaning of the word, and no problem. Not that many issues. It's pretty regular and easy to understand. However, there are a couple of irregular verbs in Nahuatl, and a lot of them are very common, such as the words for coming and going. And they don't follow this pattern that you see here. They follow an irregular pattern. So essentially, you have to memorize the conjugations for these, but you'll still see that even though they're quote unquote irregular, they're not too terribly irregular as compared to other languages like Spanish. When you conjugate some of those irregular verbs in Spanish, you're like, what were they thinking back in the time they were creating Spanish, or whoever started speaking Spanish? I guess it comes from Latin, so I guess those irregularities may come from there. I don't know the whole history, but I'll tell you that Nahuatl does have irregular verbs, but not as many, and the irregularities are not as irregular either. So I have not created the slide for the verb to go, but I am about to create it. So in Nahuatl, to say to go, the verb is ya. It's ya. And even though it looks like we spell it as Y-A-U, as in yauh, we say it as ya. Now, there may be some varieties in Central Nahuatl that will say yauh. But remember, we had that class on pronunciation when they say Y-A-U-H. The U-H, we don't pronounce the U, but other varieties might say yauh. Okay, so in our variety, we say niya. So we say like this, niya. I go. Tiya, you go. And this is where it gets a little bit irregular. Now, if you go and learn classical Nahuatl, you'll learn that in classical Nahuatl, the word for he or she goes is just ya. But in our variety and in other varieties as well, this is now no longer ya. They say yowi. Yowi. Okay, so for niya, I go. Tiya, you go. And for he or she, it would be yowi. Now that's how they say it in Chicoltepec variety. But in other Huasteca varieties, you might see them say yawi. Okay? So it's he or she goes. So it's niya, tilla, and yowi. Oh, no H. Sorry, no H. Yowi. Okay, and for we go, it's tiyowi or tiyawi. Okay, well, tiyowi, we go. Y'all go, it's tiyo in yowi. And they go is yowi. Yowi. With an H. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty regular still. It's just that this third person, he or she goes, it's not ya. Although in classical, it is ya. So in classical, it is niya, tilla, ya. And then in classical, it would be tiwi, anwi, and we. That's in even in classical times, the verb ya is also irregular, but it's irregular in a different way. So they would say tiwi, anwi, and we. But for us, it's tiyowi, inyowi, and yowi. Okay, so you can see it's kind of irregular and you kind of have to memorize this. And I still make mistakes when I try to use the verb to go because it's irregular and I don't like irregular verbs. But I also want to bring up in this class something that, copy. Something that happens or that I've heard before. So a lot of people may hear the phrase Mexica tiawi. And people always ask me about this. So this is why I'm bringing it up. Mexica tiawi. So they say that's like, let's go Mexica. But actually, it's not grammatically correct. Now, I found out why this isn't grammatically correct. And this is because the person who brought this term into the Danza Azteca circle, his name is David Vasquez. And he, in his variety of Nahuatl, I guess they don't use the same, they don't use the same imperative form as other varieties of Nahuatl. And so he translates it as Mexica tiawi, as Mexica let's go. But really this translates as Mexica we go. So I'm not sure that it's a really good translation, although I understand why people use it. But it really means Mexica we go. If you're really trying to say let's go, what you would actually say would be, and it depends which variety you speak. It's kind of like, okay, well, I'll explain right now. Ooh, copy, paste. Okay, now you see what goes into making this class. Okay, Mexica, let's go would be Mexica Matiyacan. Like that. That's how you would actually say Mexica, let's go as a command, like let's do this. If you go back in a couple of lessons ago, you remember when you give us a command, we say it as ma and ti and the verb and then can, right? So matiyacan is the way to say let's go. Now in other varieties, it might be slightly different. And in classical, this is matiwiyan because it's irregular in classical. But most varieties would say matiyacan, not tiawi. And so I don't know, I guess there's some kind of miscommunication, but what I think actually happened is probably David Vasquez was like, oh, how to say vamos? You know, like in Spanish, you say vamos to mean like we go, but also vamos is the command form of the verb. So I think he just translated it as like Mexica vamos. And so that's why he's saying tiawi, but honestly, it should be matiyacan or matiwiyan, depending on which variety you speak. Okay, and so so the command forms of this verb are matiyacan, or so if you want to tell somebody go, you would say shiya, go. And if you want to tell them more than one person to go, you would say shiyakan. So these are the command forms of this verb. Now I can't really show you all the other irregular forms of to go because they're in other tenses, and I haven't taught you the other tenses, but it is also irregular in other tenses. So basically this whole verb is irregular, and in order for you to know how to use it, you're gonna have to memorize it, like for every single tense. But for the most part, even the irregularities are not that irregular. So, okay, like remember that I also taught you that there's commands that you can give to yourself or you can give to somebody else. So these are pretty regular in Nahuatl. So if you want to say like I should go, you would say manilla. Manilla, I should go. Or may I go? Like in Spanish, que yo vaya o debo ir, etc. Command forms, command. So it is still pretty regular. So manilla, if you want to tell somebody to go, of course it's shia, go as a command. And if you want to say like, I wish that he would go, you would say mayowi, mayowi. Ah, come on, underline. Oh God. Or mayawi, depending on which variety. So it would be like, may he or she go, or he or she should go. Mayowi. If you want to say, hey, let's go, let's go, it would be matiyakan. Matiyakan. Underline. Matiyakan. Okay. And for y'all as a command, it would be shiyakan. So command you. Shiyakan, go. Oh, go as a command. And if you want to say they should go, it would be mayowi. Mayowi. Oh, I hate that underline thing, drives me crazy. Okay, mayowi. They should go. So pretty much it is pretty regular, except maybe this is a little bit different because you're not adding the UH, and this matiyo, matiyakan, it's matiyakan. Matiyakan. Mayowi, shiyakan, there we go, mayowi. So these are the command forms, or also the should or may forms that you could go back and refer to in the previous lesson that I taught you about commands. So essentially, you have to memorize each of these forms, and there's nothing much that you could do than to go around it or anything. Pretty much just memorize. Okay, so that's basically going. But if you want to say coming, to come, you're gonna see that it's this verb huallauh, which is also irregular. So if you want to say I come, you would say ni huallauh, which that's easy. You want to say you come, ti huallauh. And if you want to say he or she comes, this is where it's also irregular. No, this one is regular. So this is huallauh. He or she comes. But once you get into the plural for this verb huallauh, it becomes irregular. So this one is not tihuallauh with an H. It would be tihuallauhi. Tihuallauhi. Like that. Tihuallauhi. So it's not what you expect it to be. For y'all, it's inhuallauhi. And for they, it's huallauhi. They come. And they come. So it's pretty much regular on the left side, but it's not regular on the right side. So you want to say something like, let's come. Or yeah, let's come. It would be ma tihualacan. So this is regular, ma tihualacan. And if you want to say, you come, Chihuahua. And you want to say for y'all to come, it would be Xihualacan. Xihualacan. So Xihuala and Xihualacan. So that, I mean, pretty much that's pretty regular. It's not too bad. And then for the forms of command for to come, these are, they're pretty easy. So maniwala, I should come. Shiwala, come. Oh, I'm getting confused. Shiwala, come. Mawala, she should come. Oh, there was a typo over there. Ooh, there's a typo. Okay. We should come. Matiwalakan. Matiwalakan. Yeah, I think that's what he said. Yeah. And then Shiwalakan. Shiwalakan. I don't remember if there's two L's. Is there two L's? I don't remember. For now, we're gonna put two L's. But I don't remember if there's two L's in there. There should be. And Mawalowi. Mawalowi. Are there two L's? Hold on. I don't remember if there's two L's or not there. I'll correct these slides later because I have to figure out. I don't remember there being two L's. And so my mind is going crazy right now. Okay. I'll have to change these slides. And so just go check the slides later so that I can 100% verify that there's two L's here because it looks weird to me right now. Okay. So essentially, they're pretty much, Wala is pretty regular, except for this weird third person and the plurals. So you see right here, it's Tiwalowi, Inwalowi, and Walowi. So those are the parts that are irregular. All right, so now let's do a practice. And I'm gonna ask you a spontaneous question. It's not gonna be that hard, obviously, because I can't think of crazy ways to trip you up right now. Okay. So how would you say ikanawat? Kenihkimo lia ikanawat. I go to school. How would you say I go to school ikanawat? Actually, do you know the word for school yet? You may not know that word.
Is it Niya Mastikal?
Oh, you're trying to say kaltlamachtik. Kaltlamachtik. Okay. You're saying kaltlamachtikal as the word for school?
Kema.
Maybe, but that sounds weird because you had the word kal in front of it and then you put kal at the end, which is weird. So you put house or building at the beginning and at the end. So there's multiple ways to say school, but the most common one is kaltlamachtiloyan. So it'd be niya. So you got the go part. And the most common one is kaltlamachtiloyan. This is the most common one. Kaltlamachtiloyan. However, there's also kaltlamachtiket, which makes zero sense, by the way. But it's kind of saying like the house of the teacher, something like that. Kaltlamachtiket, the house of the teacher or the building of the teacher. But the most common one that you'll see pretty much everywhere else other than the Huasteca, and they do say this in the Huasteca, is kaltlamachtiloyan. And you might be asking like, what does this break down to? And kal is like building or house. And tlamachtiloyan, this construction no longer exists in modern Huasteca Nahuatl and probably not in other varieties of Nahuatl, maybe Milpa Alta Nahuatl. But tlamachtiloyan is a construction that means place where things are taught. This lo, it means things are, it means it is taught. And so this tense tlamachilo, it doesn't currently exist, but since I studied classical Nahuatl, I know that tlamachilo means things are taught. And yan is another, is a variant of the can. So kal tlamachilo yan just means the place where things are taught. That's how that word breaks down. I wish this tense would exist, but that's a whole rant that I don't want to go on. I also want to point something out that's very important. And notice that Nahuatl doesn't have this word to. So even though I just say niya kaltlamachtiloyan, in English and in Spanish, we have this, I go to school, and I, or in Spanish it would be like voy a la escuela. But Nahuatl doesn't have that. Nahuatl, you just say niya kaltlamachtiloyan, and it's understood that I go to school. There is no way to actually indicate the word to. Actually, later on in this lecture, you'll find out that there's a kind of way to do that, but there is actually not a word to say to somewhere or from somewhere. But there's ways to indicate a direction or a motion from or to a place, and those are the things that actually indicate to and from in Nahuatl. Now, because of the influence of Spanish, you will see that there is a word for from, but it's borrowed from Spanish. So in Spanish, we say the word de to mean from. And so you'll see that Nahuatlized the word de and created and uses the word tlen to mean from. But it really comes from Spanish de, and then because there's no letter D in Nahuatl, they converted it into tlen, and tlen is a word in Nahuatl that does exist. So they'll say tlen instead of de. But I guess I'll explain that like after that, after this exercise. So duplicate slide. All right, so how keniki moilia ikanawat. You go to the market, or you go to the market, or if you know this word for market. If you don't, then I'll tell you the word. So how would you say you go to the market?
Tianguis.
Tianguis. Okay, so tia, you go. And this would be tianguis. So this word tianguis, which is Spanish, borrowed into Spanish from Nahuatl, it's actually tianguis or tianquisco. Tianguis. It's really, the word is really tianquistli, but most people have really shortened it now to say tianquis or tianquisco. So tia tianquisco, you go to the market. Tia tianquis or tia tianquisco. Okay, kenihki moilia ikanawat, he or she goes, where can people go? Tell me a place you want to know. He or she goes to his house. Or, okay, fine, her house. So let's start with the he or she goes. So in Nahuatl, this is irregular.
Yauh.
So yauh would be the regular way to do it, but in Huasteca Chicontepec variety, they don't say yauh. They say
yeah.
Well, I wish they would say yeah.
Okay.
I wish they would, because I hate irregularities, but they don't. No, and other varieties also say this way. It's not just Huasteca, but you got to know that these things exist because you're going to see other people use them. Like when I read, I see these variety differences.
Yowie.
So they say yowie. Yowie, he or she goes. So there's no prefix in front, right? It's just yowie or yawi, yowie or yawi. And to her house. Oh, I forgot. Ical. And I'll let you know that generally when you're talking about somebody's house, even though we say it in English as their house, like the building the house, in Nahuatl they would say something more akin to his or her home. And so they would say something like ichan or ichan from the word chantly. So I think there's in Mexican Spanish, I think there's a slang word for my house in
Chanto.
What is it?
Chanto.
Chanto. That one they believe comes from Nahuatl because of the word chantli. But most of the time they're gonna say ichan or ichansin if they want to be like nice, right? Yowi ichan or yowi ichansin. And so that word of chanto, that's slang in Mexican Spanish, they believe comes from Nahuatl. Oh, here she goes to her house. She. Okay. Kenihki moilia y Nahuatl. How would you say? We go to work, as the place, the physical place, not like working, like we go to work to like do actual work, but like the place of work. There is a different word in Nahuatl between work and to work, like verb work. So we would say we go. So this is, remember, irregular.
Tiowi.
Tiowi. And to work. So there's no to, right? At least not this kind of to. Well, there's not the other kind of to either. Never mind. Tiowi. And then do you all know the word for work? Like the place of work.
The word that comes to mind is tekit.
Tekit. So this word tekit, it means like work, like the place of work, or it also can mean like a job, like a job that you're doing right now. Like if you go and look at the homework, I call it chan tekit, and that's actually a word that they use too. It's like, it's just kind of like in English, homework, chan tekit. Remember, I just taught you that chan is like somebody's home. So chan tekit means homework, literally. And that is the word they use for homework. So tekit is work, like it means like your job, like your physical job, but it also means like an actual job that you're doing. Like I'm doing, I don't know, I'm working on a paper, I'm doing homework, I have this task that I'm doing. So that word tekit means both of those, or all those things. But if you want to say like working, to do working, it'd be tekiti. That's the verb form of working, tekiti. But here we mean the physical place, tekit. Probably more commonly, you would probably see something like toteki, like this. Like we go to our job, something like that. Tiyowi toteki. Tiyowi toteki. But we could say tiyowi teki, although it's kind of clumsy. But you could do it. Tiyowi tekit. Kwali. Keniki moelia y Nahuatl. Y'all. What's another place you could go to? Y'all go to a festival. Y'all go to a festival. Maybe you don't know the word for festival. That's the part I'm going to teach you.
In your we.
In your we. So if you remember, the word for Day of the Dead in Nahuatl is, maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. This word for festival is in that word for Day of the Dead in Nahuatl. I told you this word, but I only briefly mentioned it, so you might not remember. Okay, so this word is ilhuic. Ilhuic. Oh, now I have one more idea for another place or thing you could go to. So in Yowi, ilhuic. So Iluit is like a festival. It also can mean not like a holiday, like an actual holiday of something, a celebration. In some ways, it kind of means day, because like you say Day of the Dead, Mihka Iluit, but it's more like the festival or celebration of the dead. Iluit. Inyowi Iluit. Y'all go to a festival. It could also be understood as like a party. Iluit. Okay, and the last question, Keniki Moilia Ikanawat, they go to a dance. They go to a dance.
Yoi mitoti something.
So, okay. Well, you got it. Yeah, it's very, yeah. You just don't know how to create a noun form of a verb, but pretty much, yes. Yoi, mi, toti, listly. When you see this ending listly, like in my artistic name, Pakilistli, it means the noun form of a verb. So, mihtotia is the verb to dance. Mihtotilistli is a dance, like a place, un baile. So Yowi, Mihtotilistli, they go to a dance. In my name, my artistic name is Pakilistli, right? It means happiness. And now that one doesn't really translate very well, but Paki, it means to be happy. Well, it means to be happy in Central Nahuatl. But anyways, in Huasteca Nahuatl, they say Yol Paki. But regardless, the noun form of Paki is Pakilistli. So Paki means to be happy, and Pakilistli means happiness. Same thing, Mihtotia means to dance, whereas Mihtotilistli means a dance. All right, Wally. So now, I'm not sure if we should practice huallauh or huallauh. Okay, how about this? Instead of me asking you each individual, look at this slide, analyze it. Oh, no, don't look at that one. Look at this one, think about it, and then whoever's brave enough can tell me all 6 forms of the verb to come, because I don't want to take too much time since there's more that I got to teach you. So what would be the 6 forms of this without looking at it? So duplicate slide. So how would you say all 6 forms? I go, you go, he or she goes, etc. Ikanawat. So I go. I'm sorry, not I go. Ooh, I messed up. I come.
Niwala.
Niwala. You come.
Tiwala.
Tiwala. He or she comes.
Wala.
Wala. We come.
Tiwala lowi.
Tiwalowi.
Tiwalowi.
I'm not sure if there's 2 L's here or not, but for now they are. Y'all come.
In Walowi.
And
Walowi.
So it's not too bad, right? It's just that the ending is a little bit weird or different. And I'll tell you that even in classical Nahuatl, this verb is also irregular. So in classical, it's niwala, tiwala, wala, tiwalwiyan. No, tiwalwi, inwalwi, and walwi. I think so. I could be wrong. But it's irregular in classical as well. Okay, so now The reason I brought these two verbs up for you, so we can say ya motlaloa and ya nehnemi. But there are other prefixes in Nahuatl that you could add to these verbs that indicate a motion. So in Nahuatl, you can say ya on motlaloa, or you could say ya on nehnemi. And these basically indicate motion away. Motion away. So this would be, so on would be motion away. Away. So in other words, when I say ni nehnemi, I'm just saying I walk. But if I say ni on nehnemi, that implies that I'm walking away, like from one place, probably the reference point of the person who's speaking, away. So if I say ni on nehnemi, I'm saying like I walk away. Ni on nehnemi. So let's do the six versions of that. Ni on nehnemi. Ti on nehnemi. Nehnemi. Nemi. Nehnemi. On nehnemi. Ti on nehnemi. In on nehnemi. And on nehnemi. 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 So this is like saying this is indicating motion away. And so we walk away. Y'all walk away. They walk away. So when I brought you that example of I go to school, even though Nahuatl doesn't have that word to, you can use this prefix on to have that meaning. So you could say I go to school, ni on ya, and even though that seems like a reduplication to us and you're like, wait, you already say I am going. Well, now what? This on has the sense of going away. So when you say ni on ya, that on gives you that idea of the to part. So even though you could say ni ya kaltlamachtiloyan, if you want to be more specific and you want to be indicate that motion away, you would say ni on ya kaltlamachtiloyan, and then it makes it clear that you're going from here to over there. Okay, so if you wanted to say I walk to school, if you want to say I walk to school, well, you could say ni nehnemi, ni nehnemi kaltlamachtiloyan, and that is understood as ni nehnemi kaltlamachtiloyan, I walk to school, but you could also say ni on nehnemi. Because then it's understood that you're going from here to over there. Motion away. So even though Nahuatl doesn't have the word to, you can kind of indicate that direction by adding that prefix on. Ni on nehnemi. All right. So you could put it in this prefix, even though it does have that indication of away, and you can use it in verbs that actually have that meaning of motion, like walking and running. So you could say ni on motlaloa, ti on motlaloa, etc. Nahuatl does have this other weird thing where it doesn't actually have to be a physical motion. It can just be like a metaphorical motion away or to something. So for example, you will hear native speakers say something like ni mech on tlapaloa, ni mech on tlapaloa. So if you break this down to its constituent parts, this means I greet you all. I greet you all. But if you break it, well, its meaning is I greet you all. But if you break it down to its actual parts, it's really saying I to y'all, motion away, greet. So you're like, wait, that seems weird. Why is there even a motion away if I'm greeting you, why is there any motion? Well, when I usually see this is like when I'm watching videos and they'll be like, oh, ni me chon tlapaloa, because they're greeting me from afar. They're greeting me from, they're in another country or they're like in a different location. So saying ni me chon tlapaloa, they're saying like, I greet you all, but the implication, and it doesn't really translate very well into English. The translation is like, well, I'm over here and I'm sending this message out to you all. And so it's not a physical motion of something actually going out. It's more of the idea of going out. And so you'll hear ni mechon tlapaloa, ni mitzon tlapaloa, and it doesn't really translate really well in English. But once you know Nahuatl, you know that, okay, they're indicating motion away because of where they are or whatever. This prefix on also has other meanings that I don't necessarily want to go into now, but one of the most important ones and that you should know is that this on also has that, this is another way to make a command form polite. So there are other meanings of on, but I don't want to get too crazy in this lecture. And you can go research this, and this only really applies to Chicontepec Nahuatl. So Chicon Tlacua. So if you remember from our classes, when I told you commands, you could say Xitlacua, eat. And in Nahuatl, it's not really rude to just tell someone to eat without telling them please or thank you or any of that. That's not rude in Nahuatl. You can just say Xitlacua. But if you want to be nice, or at least in Chicontepec, Huasteca Nahuatl, you can add this extra onto it, and it means like kind of like please eat. So it's like a nicer way to say a command. Xicontlacua. Now, this is a little bit confusing too, because this on can also mean direction away, right? So this could also be interpreted as like go and eat. But you'll learn later that there's also a different way to say go and do something over there in another location. So even though this can be translated as like go over there and eat, there's another way to say go over there and eat. So, but please eat, you can do this as saying like Xicontlacua. With adding this on, it makes it nice. Okay, so that's two of the functions of on. Now we also have a way in Nahuatl to indicate to come. So we have, you can say ya onehnemi, this person's walking away towards over there. But if you want to say they're walking towards me or in this direction, you're going to use the word wal. Now, doesn't wal look very familiar? Well, wal comes from that verb wala, to come, right? So wala, this is like a shortened version of the verb wala. So ya wal nehnemi, if I hear wal nehnemi, I understand that this person is walking this, and they're walking towards over here. So ya wal nehnemi, that person is walking over here. Versus, you could also say ya wal motlaloa. Ya wal motlaloa. This person is running, but they're running towards me. Okay? So this wal is pretty much used exactly like the on. So if you want to say like, I I come to school. Ni wala. No, see, sorry. Well, I come to school, that's ni wala. Oops. But if you want to say I walk to school, that's what I was trying to do. I walk to school. Ni wal nehnemi. Ni wal nehnemi kaltlamachtiloyan. Sorry. Okay. So if I say I walk to school, but I say ni wal nehnemi, this is more understood like if you're actually at school, right? And you're saying I walk to school, but the understanding is that you're already at school, right? But you're doing that directions towards here. So this I walk to school is I walk to school, right? But in Nahuatl, if you say, if you're actually at the school and you say like, hey, how do you get to school? And you say ni wal nehnemi kaltamashtiloyan, you're saying you walk to school, but the indication is that you're going from over there to over here. So I guess this would be something like I come walking to school. I come walking to school. But this is more succinctly said in Nahuatl as niwal nehnemi kaltamachtiloyan. And just like on this wal can also be metaphorical. So you could also say like, now it doesn't really make sense to say ni mech wal tlapaloa. I can't say like I greet you all over here, tlapaloa. Doesn't really make sense. But I can't really think of any examples right now of a metaphorical sense of this. But this is not just in like motion verbs. Oh, I thought of one. So like, for example, if I send you, that sending is a motion word. Oh, you send me a letter. I guess there is some motion in there. You send me a letter. This verb would be so you would say this, tinech titlanilia. Well, this tinech titlanilia, and we're gonna translate letter as amat, as paper, which because that's probably how they would say titech titlanilia amat. Oh, no H. But you can say it that way, or you could also say it as tinech wal. Tinech wal titlanilia amat. Where this wal has that indication of emotion from you to me. So hopefully that, my battery is running low. I don't know why it disconnected all of a sudden. Okay, anyways, well, thankfully I reconnected it. All right, Kwali. So hopefully that makes, even though this isn't like an actual, this is kind of a motion away. But you can see how you could use this in verbs that are not very directly related to like moving, but there's still some kind of motion happening. Now what uses these on and wal. I didn't make a summary yet, but essentially the verb to go in Nahuatl is ya, but it's irregular. The verb to come is wala, and it's irregular. And you use the prefix of on for motion away, and the prefix of wal for motion towards, like towards the speaker. I say like speaker, but okay, I hope that's clear. All right. I have yet to decide what I'm going to do next week, but I will come up with that and update the slides. Does anyone have any tlatlanilistli? I hope that the class is clear. I did have a plan for the class. I just didn't get to make the slides.
It was good to see your thinking process.
This is what I'm doing when I'm making the class, right? Like, oh, should there be an extra letter or not? I don't remember. Let's go find out. Anyways, but yeah, I hope that wasn't messy because I don't like to be messy, but I really didn't get the opportunity to make the slides. But the plan was there. I was going to plan. This was the plan to teach you that.
I liked it because it was sort of impromptu, you know, in the sense that you were coming up,
Impromptu.
like Adrian said, your
It was
teaching
planned,
process.
planned impromptu.
Yeah, but you know, I like the whole that it went well for me, anyways.
That I'm not a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it was fairly clear.
Cool. Well, I mean, this is how I structure classes anyway. It's just that you basically saw me actually do it, but this is how I think through it. I think very logically through it. But I would have put more pictures if I had the time and come up with more examples and harder questions. I have some really good PDFs with that give you like all the versions of these verbs. So I should probably send them to you at one point. But since you all haven't learned the tenses, I'm not 100% sure yet if it makes clear sense to send the irregular forms since you don't know the regular forms of the other tenses. But whatever. But I have that information if you need it. And I will check on those letters.
So the word that you have on the screen right now, tlatlalilistli, so that's a noun, a noun formed as a verb, right?
Yep. Yes, it is. So this is coming from the verb tlatlania. And I'll tell you, let me show you. So this would be from tla plus itlani. Well, itlania. Well, it might be itlani. And listli. Okay, so tla is things. Itlania is to ask somebody for something. That's the verb that you would find. Tlatlani. And then, so, there's also a verb that is itlani. And so I have to 100% verify that itlani is a transitive verb because it may or may not be. So I'm looking that up right now. But itlania, I know for sure means to ask somebody something. For something, but I believe itlani means to ask for something. But regardless, it doesn't really matter because you still drop the A and it becomes, oh, you're asking why there's another tla there. Tlatlani listli. Oh, that's because of this. I also want to say that when tla is followed by IH, the I disappears, and that's a regular pattern. So there's this tla is coming, it blocks the I and it becomes tla, and then tlani. And then the A gets dropped in class 3 verbs, and when you add listli to it. So tlatlani listli it literally means things that are asked or things that are asked of people, something like that. Something that is asked or asking things from people, something like that.
Request it, maybe?
Like a request. Yeah, something like a request. I guess that's more succinct than what I'm going like literally word for word, but more succinct would be like a request. Itlania, let me look up itlania. Itlania. Is it okay? Oh yeah, so okay. Itlanilia. I wonder why itlania is not here. It's in my other dictionary. Okay, well, I found out that the verb itlani is a transitive verb that requires an object. So you could say that this is tla itlani listli, like that. Tla itlani listli. Things that are asked. Or yeah, asking for things. Something like that, asking for things. Or quote unquote a request. The noun form of that, so a request. That's where that comes from. I'll leave this in the slide for other people in case when they look at it later. because I have this all the time, but now you know where it comes from. So there's pakilisli, happiness. And any other questions about these verbs? Oh, I didn't talk about from, huh? Let me tell you about from. So from is a little bit complicated in Nahuatl, because in classical Nahuatl, there is not a word for from. In classical Nahuatl, there's no word for from. So, but in modern Nahuatl, they'll use this word tlen. This word tlen is borrowed from Spanish. De, from de. But since Spanish, since Nahuatl doesn't have the letter D, they use this word tlen. So they would say, like, for example, like Diego's book. You know, like in Spanish, well, you know how I taught you, okay, you could say, y amos Diego. And this is the way I prefer because it's a traditional way to say it, y amos Diego. But you will hear it, you'll pretty much sometimes see this. Oh, box. Diego's box. Diego's book. Now, I don't like this, but you could do something like amos tlen Diego. Something like that. Kind of like in Spanish, el libro de Diego, amos tlen Diego. Or Diego de Mexico, or something like that. Like this de that is in Spanish, they'll just translate it from Spanish and put it in Nahuatl as tlen. So for example, like I come from, like, let's say I come from Mexico. Let's say you want to say that. Well, you can say I come from Mexico. I come from Mexico. Now, remember, you don't actually need to put the word from in Nahuatl, because you could just say ni huallauh Mexico. Mexico tlali or Mexico. Let's go Mexico right now. Okay, fine, Mexico tlali. Yes, I know that there's no I there because that's just how they say it. I don't know how they die, but now they die. I come from Mexico, ni huallauh Mexico tlali. But you could probably say ni huallauh tlen Mexico, and this is like translating it directly from Spanish. Let me make the font smaller. Come on, font. Oh, wrong. Ni huallauh tlen Mexico. Now, I personally don't like it because you don't actually need the tlen there. But you could, in theory, say ni huallauh tlen Mexico, and I believe this is through the influence of Spanish. So in Nahuatl, you don't actually have to say the tlen part. You could say ni huallauh Mexico, and it's completely understood. Ni huallauh tlen Mexico. And see, that tlen would be like borrowing it from Spanish, like vengo de Mexico. But you don't actually need the tlen in Nahuatl because the motion is understood. And then that's one form, the form of from, like a location. But in Nahuatl, there are other words that in English would be translated as from, but in Nahuatl are not translated as from. And Nahuatl doesn't have the word from in those constructions. Oh God, I can't do that. So this is that from, like motion from there to here. But like in another example, like like I bought it from you. I buy it from you. I buy it from you. Nahuatl doesn't have a word for from there. Nahuatl uses a different verb. So you normally, if I say I buy, I would say nikowa, right? Nikowa. I buy it. But in Nahuatl, to say I buy it from you, you would say nikowilia. So they add, and yes, there's an I there. It's weird, but this is a weird change that Nahuatl makes. But anyways, Nahuatl, to say in some situations of like from, Nahuatl just creates another verb for that. And so when you're doing something from a person to another person. So right here is saying, I buy it from you. Well, Nahuatl doesn't have a word for from. And what Nahuatl does is it creates a verb, lia, which is an applicative verb, to make it mean from you to me. So, Nihko wilia, I means I buy it from you. So Nahuatl just creates a new verb. And so, for example, you know the word tlazokamati. It means thank you, right? Well, if I want to say I thank you, I do that action to you. Nahuatl creates a new verb that says ni meets tlazokamati lia. And they add the lia. They create a new verb with lia because I'm doing an action to you. Ni meets tlazokamati lia is how you actually say I thank you. But this lia, in some situations in English, it gets translated as from. In some situations, it gets translated as for. And so from is a little bit complicated, and lia doesn't mean for. It doesn't mean from. It can mean from, or it can mean for, and it depends on the context. So that's why I didn't really answer or tell you the word for from, because it's pretty complicated, but this is in summary what it is. But it's more complicated than that. And I would say that the best way to learn this is to learn it from context of when you need to use it in whatever situation you need to use it. That's what I had to say about that.
Ashkana Nikamati, that Glenn will get me confused with the way I already learned it.
I know, right? I agree. And honestly, it's not actually necessary because in classical Nahuatl, they didn't use of at all. They didn't use it. There was different constructions. So like saying like I come from Mexico, they would just say ni huallauh Mexico or ni huallauh Mexico, I guess that's what they would say. Or if they want to say a person from Mexico, like a Mexican, well, I guess you would say a person who comes from a town, they would just say the person and the town. They wouldn't say the word of. So like if I would say a woman from Jalisco, well, in modern, we would say like Siwat Tlen Xalixco, a woman from Jalisco with that Tlen, right? Siwat Tlen Xalixco. But in classical Nahuatl, they would just say Xalixco Siwatl, Xalixco Siwatl. They wouldn't use the word there. They would just say that would be understood as a woman from Jalisco. So this Tlen, I don't like it either, but I'm just telling you how it is. And I just know this because I read so much, and yeah, this is what it is. But I don't like it either.
If you wanted to say I'm quoting from Diego's book, does it matter if you change the order and say Diego Amos, Diego Tlenamochtli? Does that mean from Diego's book? In other words, if you change the order of the sentence.
From Diego's book. I would say it as Tlen y Amos Diego. Yes.
Okay.
Tlen y Amos Diego.
Okay.
But then now you're gonna say, well, does that Tlen mean from Diego or does that Tlen mean from? Don't know. But I would say it as from Diego's book. I would say Tlen y Amos Diego, whereas the E from y Amos would mean Diego's book, and the Tlen would be saying from Tlen y Amos Diego.
Right. I mean, because people always like quote things, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say underneath you might say from so and so, such a book.
Tlen y Amos. Yeah. And you'll see that sometimes, like when you say like, oh, like the dance from the, I don't know, like there's some chains where you could say of, and I can't think of an example, a good one right now, but you'll see in sometimes you could add the E or you could just add tlen, and then the word.
Okay.
I can't think of any good examples, but I know I've run into it before. And it was confusing to me when I first started learning Nahuatl, because in my mind, tlen just means what? Because I had learned classical Nahuatl. But then I started noticing the pattern the more I read. And then after I spoke to a lot of people, I'm like, oh, when they're saying tlen, they actually mean of. And then I thought about it more and I was like, that must come from de, from Spanish. So there is no de. And actually, you'll see that sometimes they actually just say de instead of tlen. But they've Nahuatlized it and made it tlen. Yeah. Any other Tlatlanilistli? Kena, amo?
Ashkana.
Ashkana. I hope class was clear and I haven't made the homework and I need to catch up. It's been crazy, y'all.
We appreciate it.
You're welcome. But I am committed still.
We are too.
Yeah,
Okay,
me too.
awesome. Tlazokamati and Timoitase Chicuellilloc. And I'll figure out what my class, well, let's see if there's any questions. As I see some chats, hold on. Hello, Mama Shane, think about doing study practice group. Oh, I got my own Zoom account. Oh, okay. James De La Rosa is saying that you all could think about creating a study group, a Zoom account that he could set up for you all to create a study group for you all to. Oh, okay. So some of you already saw this. Cool. Well, if you do create a study group, I'm happy to help you if you have random questions, because I know you're going to have random weird questions. Write them down. And then when class comes up, ask me those weird ass questions that you're going to have. Because sometimes they just come up out of like conversations. So yeah, definitely form study groups. And also forming study groups helps you retain the information when you actually discuss it with other people. So get on that. All right. Bueno, tlazokamati miak imohuantin ni mech on tlazokamatilia.
Moitase, Tlazokamati.
I'll leave this on with all these.
Tlazokamati.
Ashtlen, I'm gonna stop the recording, but I'm gonna leave the class going on so that so that he has a chance to copy these emails. He's probably copying them right now. So let me stop the recording though.